Humanity is morbid, right? But usually about that. In the words that the tyrannical governments cover some of the atrocities they did. We know about that we can try to export them. In this video, it will be the first iceberg we will explain on this channel. I love to watch some of these iceberg explains, and today I saw Government Coverup Iceberg created by Reddit user u/funds refrigerator 567, and I will explain this iceberg today. MLK refers to the conspiracy theories about the assassinations of Martin Luther King Jr., a prominent leader of the civil rights movement, related to different accounts of the incident on April 4, 1968 in Memphis, Tennessee. Some people say that the FBI or CIA assassinated him. Chernobyl refers to a nuclear accident on 26 April 1986 at the number 4 reactor in the Chernobyl nuclear power plant near Pripyat in the north of the Ukrainian SSR in the Soviet Union. The government of the USSR denied this death toll of the incident. However, to this day, Chernobyl is a tourist attraction featured in the video games like Stalker video game. Area 51 refers to the name highly classified U.S. Air Force facility within the Nevada Test and Training Range. A remote detachment admirized by Edwards Air Force Base. The facility is officially called Hunt Homey Airport or Groom Lake. Details of its operation are kept private. Still, the USAF say it is an open training range community told to support experimental aircraft and weapons development and testing. The USAF and CIA acquired this site in 1955, primarily for flight testing. The Lockheed U-2 aircraft. Rumors say that Area 51 was where the US government collected some alien organs and UFO. Tiananmen Square massacre referred to a student-led pro-democracy demonstration held in Beijing in 1989, violently suppressed by Chinese military force, the PLA, resulting in an estimated death toll from several hundreds to several thousand victims. Discussion of the events was subsequently convicted and tabooed in China to this day. One of the most infamous things that happened in this event is Tank Man, a photo that to this day the man on the image is mysterious. Some people say that he fled to Hong Kong, or some people say that he working in somewhere in southern China, such as Guangzhou, or even cities like Shanghai, or some people say that he committed suicide. Manhattan Project is a research and development undertaking during the Second World War. This produced the first nuclear weapon from 1942 to 1946. The project was under the direction of Major General Leslie Gould of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. The nuclear physicist Julius Robert Oppenheimer was the director of the Los Alamos laboratory that designed the bomb. MKUltra referred to an illegal human experimentation program decided and undertaken by the Central Intelligence Agency, or the CIA. Notable victims such as Whitey Bulger and Charles Manson are the members of the MKUltra. It was used numerous methods to manipulate the subject, mental state and brain function, such as the covert administration of high dose of psychoactive drug and other chemical without the subject contains erectile shock, hypnosis, sensory deprivation, isolation, verbal and sexual abuse, and other forms of torture. Fukushima refers to a nuclear accident at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant in Okuma, Fukushima, Japan. The approximated cause of the disaster was the Tohoku earthquake and tsunami in 2011. Clinton's email referred to a private email server for official public communication rather than using official State Department email accounts maintained on federal servers. Operation Northwood refers to a possible false flag operation that the US and CIA operatives to both staged and committed acts of terrorism against American citizens and blaming the Cuban government, especially the Castro regime. Project Stargate refers to a secret U.S. Army unit established in the 70s at Fort Mayday, Maryland, by the DIA and SR intelligence to investigate threats to potential for physics phenomena in military and domestic intelligence apparatus. Watergate refers to a political scandal in the U.S. involved the administrations of President Richard Nixon from 1972 to 1974 that led to Nixon's resignation. Waco Siege, also known as Waco Massacre, was a siege by the U.S. federal government and Texas state law enforcement officials of a compound belonging to the religious cult known as Branch Davidian between February 28 to April 19, 1993. Holocaust denial refers to an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory that asserts that the Nazis' genocide of Jews, Roma, and homosexuals is a myth, fabrication, or escalation. Countries who support this idea, such as Iran, Palestine, and even some German politicians too. The Tuskegee study refers to a human experimental program of African American men in the American South between 1932 to 1972 by the United States Public Health Service and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. The government used syphilis to inject African American men because they saw that African American men were more degenerate than African American women. False flag refer to an act that committed to discard the source of responsibility and pinning the blame on another party, an example that false flag can use in the espionage operation. Landmine killings refer to a killing of civilians in a war zone. More than 5,000 people, and initially mines are explosives remain of war casualties occur in every region worldwide, causing an estimated to 15,000 to 20,000 injured yearly. According to the Hague Convention, using landmines as weapons was considered a war crime. The Pentagon paper was a paper that reports of the Office of the Secretary of Defense Vietnam Task Force is a U.S. Department of Defense history of the United States political and military involvement in Vietnam from 1945 to 1967. Released by Daniel Ellsberg, who had works on the studies. They were first brought to the attention of the public on the front page of the New York Times in 1971. The Boys on the Track refers to the killings of Don Henry and Kelvin Leaf on the night of August 23, 1987. The bodies of 16-year-old Don Henry and 17-year-old Kelvin Leaf were hit by a freight train in Alexander, Arkansas, United States. As they were laying on the track, the locomotive engineer enhanced the brake while blowing the horn, but the train could not stop in time and rolled over the bodies, showing evidence of a stab wound. The deaths of Henry and Edith were part of the Clinton's body count conspiracy theory. The Roswell incident occurred during the flying disc crash in 1947, sparked by widespread media coverage of pilot Kenneth Arnold, a late flying amid hundreds of reports nationwide. On July 8, 1947, Roswell Army Airfield press release was broadcast via wire transmissions. The Army quickly reacted to the release, falsely stating that the crash object was merely a conventional weather balloon. Ruby Ridge referred to an 11-day siege in August of 1992 in Boundary County, Idaho, of a cabin occupied by the Weaver's family. It began on August 21st when the U.S. Marshal Service deputy came to arrest Randy Weaver under a bench warrant after failing to appear on federal firearms charges. The Fort Pinto is a subcompact car made by Ford Motor Company. It became infamous in the 1970s for bursting into flame if its gas tank was ruptured in a collision. The Injured People and Survival lawsuit uncovered how the company rushed the Pinto's through production and onto the market. The U.S. warfare test began on the springs of 1943 in order from U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt. Research continued following World War II as the U.S. built a large stockpile of biological agents and weapons. Iran-Contra affair referred to a political scandal in the U.S. occurs during the second term of Reagan's between 1981 and 1986. Senior administration officials secretly facilitated the sales of arms to the Iranian government, which was the subject of an arms embargo. The administration hoped to use the arms sales produced to fund the Contras, a right-wing militia group in Nicaragua, under the Boland Amendment. Federal financing of the Contras by government appropriation had been prohibited by Congress, but the loophole was to use non-appropriated funds. The Bologna massacres or Bologna bombing was one of the most deadliest and most infamous terrorist attacks in Italy since World War II, which killed 85 people and wounded over 200 people. It was part of the strategies of tensions and intended to cast blame on militant leftist groups. NAR members Valentino Fioravanti and Francesca Mambro were convicted of the bombings. Downing Street memos is the notes of secret meetings of senior British government defense and intelligence figures discussing to build up to the war, which include a direct reference to class the US policy of this time. The names refers to 10 Downing Street is the residence of the British Prime Minister. The memo, written by Downing Street Foreign Policy, assigned Matthew Rycroft, record the head of the SIS, as expressed it to views following his recent visit to Washington, D.C., that George W. Bush wanted to remove Iraq dictator Saddam Hussein through military actions, justified by the conjunction of terrorism and WMD, but the intelligence and fact were being fixed around the policy. Teapot Dome scandal was a bribery scandal involved the administrations of the U.S. President Warren G. Harding from 1921 to 1923. Now we first the 2 tiers and be warned, in the next tier things will get worse, and if you feel disturbed by this, please leave this video right now. Bloody Sunday was a massacre during the Troubles in Northern Ireland. 14 people died, 13 were killed outright, while the death of another man 4 months later was attributed to his injury. Many victims were shot while fleeing from the soldier, and some were shot while trying to help the wounded. Other protesters were injured by shrapnel, rubber bullet, or baton. 2 were run down by British Army vehicles, and some were beaten to death or injured. The British government had 2 investigations. The Wisely Tribunal had in the aftermath. Essentially, they cleared the soldiers and British authority of blame. It described some soldiers shooting as bordering on the reckless, but accepted their claims that they shot at gunmen and bomb throwers. The report was widely criticized as a whitewash. The Houthi power plant. You don't know about the Houthi power plant, but I know that this was an Iranian nuclear program, that the CIA and Mossad wanted to destroy it. Van Gogh's death was a theory saying that Van Gogh, a Dutch painter, was assassinated by someone. Agent Orange was a chemical herbicide and one of the most infamous weapons that used during the Vietnam War. The Bayer conductment scandal was a medical scandal between 1970s and the early 1990s, and estimate that 8,000 people in the UK were given condemned blood transfusion and product infected with hepatitis C or HIV. People with hemophilia and conduction that affect the blood ability to clot were particularly affected. The Rana Plaza collapse was a structural failure that occurred in 2013 in Sawa Ublasa of Dhaka district in Bangladesh, where an 80-story commercial building collapsed. The search for the dead ended on 13 of May, with a death toll of 1,134 and approximately 2,500 injured people were rescued from the building. It is considered to be one of the worst accidental structural failures in modern human history since World War II. You definitely know what is the Dreyfus affair is. Probably it was quite to be a scandal in the French military. Refers to that a Jewish general named Alfred Dreyfus was accused for spy for the Germans and exiled in French Guiana, but in reality, a man who was behind the accusations of Alfred Dreyfus is Charles du Pâté de Com. But nevertheless, I will make a separate video about the Dreyfus affair. NSA Prison Program was a code name for a program under which the NSA collect internet communication from various US internet companies, also known as the program. Usually about it is similarly to the video game Watchdog. The Gulf of Tonkin incident was an international confirmation that led to the US engaging more directly in the Vietnam War. On August 4, 1964, between North Vietnam and US, the confrontations and the apparent but imaginary accidents on August 4th. Later, investigation reveals that the second attack never happened. The official American claim is that it was primarily based on errors communications. Karen Sinkwood was an American chemical technician and labor union activist known for raising concern about corporate practice related to the health or safety in a nuclear facility. She worked at the Kerr-McGee Cimarron Field Fabrication Site in Oklahoma, making plutonium plate, and became the first woman of the union negotiating team. After testifying to the Atomic Energy Commission about her concern, she was found to have plutonium contaminations on her body and in her house while driving to meet with a New York Times journalist and an official of her union national office. She died in a car crash under unclear situation. The Katyn massacres was one of the most infamous war crimes perpetrated by the Allies, the Soviet Union. It was the brutal mass executions of 22,500 Polish soldiers and civilians by the NKVD, Stalin's most furious secret police, in 1940. Following the end of the Second World War, the new Polish Communist government removed these atrocities from the history books due to wanting not to destroy the relationship between Communist Poland and the USSR. Following the Solidarity movement winning the election in 1989 and the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, and Poland joined NATO in 1999 and EU in 2004, the new democratic Polish government put the Katyn massacres on the new history books for the new generations of Poles to remember what happened in 1940 in Katyn. #Never Again. HAARP is a program that researches the ionosphere, the highest giant part of Earth's atmosphere. The Nayara testimony was a false testimony given before the U.S. Congressional Human Rights Cause on October 10, 1990, by a 15-year-old girl. She was identified as Nayara. The testimony was widely publicized and was cited numerous times by the U.S. Senators and President George H.W. Bush to support in Kuwait during the Gulf War. In the 1992, it was revealed that Nayara's last name was al-Shabaab and that she was a daughter of Shah al-Shabaab, the Kuwait ambassador of the U.S. Furthermore, it was revealed that her testimony was organized as a part of the Citizens for a Free Kuwait public relations campaign run by the American public relations firm Hughes and Coulson for the Kuwaiti government. Following this, al-Shabaab testimony became an example of modern atrocities propaganda. Volleyball 5 refers to a group of Australian journalists who were brutally murdered by the Indonesian soldiers during the military dictatorship of Indonesia between 1968 to 1998. The cause of that is quite to be believed that Indonesians wanted to invade East Timor due to Indonesia was a Muslim country and East Timor was a Catholic country. and this was quite to be an example of general repression during the Cold War in Southeast Asia. Exploding Cigar was a plot of the CIA to assassinate Fidel Castro in the late 50s. It was quite to be believed that Castro was loved to smoking cigars, and usually about that, the CIA collaborated with the mafia and creating this cigar. Usually, it's confusing, but quite to be known about that exploding cigar was quite to be sounds like a James Bond movie, you know that. Operation Timber Stamper was a series of nukes tests conducted by the US government in the early 50s at the Nevada test sites. The Tumbler Snapper series of tests followed Operation Buster Jackal and predicted Operation Ivy. The My Lai massacre was a notorious war crime that committed by the American government. In 1968, the Charlie Company committed heinous war crimes in the village of My Lai. Numerous tactics like scorched earth, mass rape, you name it. But after the war, many people who committed these war crimes never convicted for more, because these people were given an amnesty by the President Richard Nixon. You definitely know what the Dirty War is. It was quite to be a part of the Operation Condor between 1976 to 1983. Between 9,000 to 30,000 people were killed or disappeared, many of whom were impossible to document due to the nature of state terrorism formerly. Like many other South American countries participated in Operation Condor like Brazil or Chile, the primary target was communists and sympathizers. Still, the target of Operation Condor also included students, militants, trade unionists, writers, journalists, feminists, artists, teachers, or when comic book writer, and citizens was suspected as a spy for the Cuban intelligence and the KGB. Usually about that, the Dirty War ended in 1983 after Argentina lost the Falkland War in 1982. The Pando Massacre was a deadly ambush in the early hours of September 11, 2008, allegedly organized by a professional authority of the Bolivian Department of Pando as part of a civil coup d'etat against the government of Evo Morales by members of the right-wing civic movement. As a result of the ambush, at least 12 indigenous protesters of the municipality of El Provillo died that day. You definitely know what hi-fi murder is. Aborigines refers to the Canadian native people between 1878 to 1996. These Aborigines were sent to school. They were abused, they were raped, they were mutilated, and usually about that, these Canadian residential schools were covered up by the Canadian government. However, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau apologized for the indigenous people of Canada about their atrocities that they did. You definitely know what the Panama Paper is. It was refers that to the leaked documents were published beginning on 2016. The paper detailed financial and authority, client informants for more than 214,488 offshore entities. The documents, some dating back to the 70s, were created by and taken from former Panamanian offshore law firm and corroborated service provider Mossack Fonseca and complied with similar leak into a searchable database. Black Tom explosion was an act of sabotage by German spies during the World War I. The blast in New York Harbor on July 30, 1916, killed at least 4 people and destroyed some $20 million worth of military goods before the US entered World War I. This incident also damaged the Statue of Liberty. It was one of the most enormous artificial non-nuclear explosions in American history. The USS Liberty was an attack on the US Navy Technical Research Ship USS Liberty by the Israeli Air Force jet fighter aircraft and Israeli Navy's mortar torpedo boats on 8 of June 1967 during the Six-Day War. If you want to know about USS Liberty, you should go to watch a video about that. Project Shad, an acronym for Shipboard Hazards and Defeats, was part of the more significant effort called Project 112, conducted during the 60s. Project Shad encompassed tests designed to identify U.S. warship vulnerability to attack with chemical or biological warfare weapons. The Bhopal disaster was a chemical accident that happened in December of 1984. Usually about that, this was quite to be one of the deadliest chemical accidents in India since the independence from the British Empire. Operation F&F refers to the tactic that the ATF using to selling the weapons from the cartels and buying back. Usually about that, this was quite to be one of the most controversial things that the ATF have ever done. Alfred Wren was an Austro-Hungarian military officer who rose the head of Evidence Bureau, the counterintelligence wings of the General Staff of Austro-Hungarian Army. He was one of the leading figures of pre-World War I espionage. His term in office was marked by radical involvement and the use of advanced technology to trap foreign spies. Due to his involvement, he introduced Raoul's successor, Major Maximilian Roch. Unlimitedly learned in 1913 that Raoul himself was also a highly paid spy, working for the intelligence service of the Imperial Russian Army. Upon being exposed as a Russian spy, Raoul committed suicide. Although Raoul's homosexuality was publicized during the affair, later investigations from Russian archives revealed that his Russian handler had no knowledge of it, and his sexuality were unrelated to his decisions to be a spy. In tense, he was entitled by the material benefit. Raoul's relations did not significantly affect the course of the war. Hwa Song's serial murder refers to Lee Chun-jae, a serial killer from South Korea that was committed numerous heinous crimes between 1986 and 1994 in Hwaseong, South Korea. Usually about that, he was arrested in 2019 after the movie Memories Murders was quite to be related to him. Usually about that, he was not sentenced to death but was sentenced to life in prison without parole. If you want to know about him, you should go to watch the movie The Memories Murder by Bong Joon-ho. The Cleveland Street scandal occurred in 1889 was a homosexual male brothels and house that the London police raided. At Flight 655 was a scheduled passenger flight from Tehran to Dubai that was shot down on 3rd of July 1988. Usually about that, this was quite to be a conspiracy theory say that this was quite to be shot by the Americans. You definitely know what is the Khmer Rouge genocide is, because this genocide was quite to be one of the worst genocides in world history since the Holocaust. Texas City disaster was an industrial accident that occurred on April 16, 1947, in the port of Texas City in Texas. Located in Galveston Bay, it was the deadliest industrial accident in U.S. history and one of history's most enormous non-nuclear explosions. No Ginri Massacre was an American war crime that refers to a U.S. military and ground fire near the village of No Ginri in central South Korea. That was quite to be that they committed a massacre killing the South Korean civilian. In 2005, South Korean government inquested certified 163 dead or missing and 55 wounded names, and added that many other victims' names were not reported to the No Ginri Peace Foundation, estimated that 250 or 300 were killed, mostly women and children. The Song's massacre was a mass killing of more than 130 slaves by the British slave ship Song, and in the day following, 29th November 1781, the William Gregson slave trading syndicate based in Liverpool owned the vessel as a part of the Atlantic slave trade. As was standard business practice, they had taken out insurance on the life of the enslaved Africans as cargo. According to the crew threw enslaved Africans overboard. When the ships ran low on drinking water following navigational mistake, they were killed. David Kelly was a Welsh scientist on biological warfare, a former head of the Defense Microbiology Division working at Portsmouth Kelly. Usually about that, in the early 1990s, he concluded that they were running a covert and legal BW program. He was appointed to the UNSCOM in 1991 as one of its chief weapons inspector in Iraq. He led tens of organization missions between May 1991 to December 1998. He also worked with UNSCOM's successor and the United Nations monitoring. Usually about that, David Kelly's legacy was a quite to be quote that he exposed everything about that the British government did. Extraordinary litigation is a euphemism for state-sponsored forcible abduction in another jurisdiction and transfer to the third state, usually called a CIA black site program. You definitely know about the rape of Nanking and the Unit 731. The rape of Nanking was quite to be a heinous war crime that perpetrated by the Japanese. Told that the Second World War was already happened in 1937. Usually the rape of Nanking is one of the worst war crimes that the Japanese done. To this day, the rape of Nanking and Unit 731 was covered by the Japanese government to this day. The Jeju Uprising was massacres of the Jeju people in South Korea in the late 40s by the South Korean government that led by Syngman Rhee. Rabah massacres was massacres that the Egyptian police and armed forces under the command of General Abdel Fattah el-Sisi raided 2 camps of protesters in Cairo. Usually about that, this was quite to be one of the most heinous crimes that happened during 2013 and was a part of the Egyptian coup d'etat. American cover-up Japanese war crime referred to that the US government covered some of the atrocity that the Japanese did. The Frankenstein prostitute ring was an allegation that began in June 1988 in Omaha, Nebraska, and attached a significant public and political interest in the late 90s, when separated states and federal grand jury concluded that the allegations were unfounded. The rings was a classified hoax. Metcalfe's sniper attack was an attack carried out by the Pacific Gas and Electric Company Metcalfe Transmission in Coyote, California, near the borders of San Jose. The attack, in which gunmen fired on 17 electrical transformers, resulted in more than $15 million worth of equipment damage, but it had little impact on the station's electrical power supply. And that is the video, folks. I know about that this was quite to be the longest video that I have done. Usually about that, this was quite to be the first iceberg charge explained, and it's really hard to done. Usually about that, I plan to reading a novel, usually a crime thriller novel about Thai society. It was quite to be titled The Land of Smile Killing Pentology, and usually about that, it was more gritty, more brutal, and more Thai gores, like a Stieg Larsson's novel or Stockholm Noir trilogy novel. But usually about that, my favorite film, part 2, it will be finished. Yeah, it's really finished. And after that, after I made this video about Government Coverup Iceberg, I will make the videos about Blood Meridian by Cormac McCarthy, because Blood Meridian is nearly finished. And that's this video, folks. If you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And if some part were inaccurate, then I will apologize about that. And goodbye.